Good afternoon, everybody, and it's great to have you. Hope your lunch was good, and I hope your conference is going fantastic. Um, Doug and I have a dual role in the company, not only as we support you all with AI, and I like to say we lead our market with probably the most modern AI deployment element, and that's why you're here. We also have the other side of the coin that we oversee our AI deployment as a company. So fully aligned empathy of how difficult and fun it is to do it at home, right? So internal facing, looking at us operational, that's some of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. Um, Appreciate you calling us expert. I'm going to start with this. I truly believe, besides Cosmos here, there's no experts in AI. I think that this field is so nuanced and the speed in which it's changing requires many of us to be in the catch-up mode. And maybe in a year from now, the conversation will be different. But when one self-labels as an expert in AI, it means the signals that are coming, I'm trying to catch up with them, and we're making inferences and deductions that are maybe nulled the day after tomorrow. So today, we have a conversation about all these signals that we're seeing to basically try to superimpose them into a framework of higher education in an AI framework for readiness. Yes, everyone loves a good framework. Thank you, Matt. And I think if you're here, you're a nerd at a core because you like frameworks. And what we've been trying to do is with our evolving expertise in data science, machine learning, now superimposed to AI, how do we start bringing this moving target of AI readiness and trying to bring our expertise in higher education and kind of have the two conversations emerge? So in other words, I really hope this framework sticks because we've been working on it, but it may change significantly over the course of the months and things of that sort. And this is the reality that we start today, right? A framework is important because on the left-hand side, you see the realities of balancing technology readiness. Many of you as a campus are just finishing your on-prem digital transformation because you went cloud. Many of you still have these lingering on-prem servers, right? And here we are talking about an investment of technology that could come and unlock a new way of doing business. So if the data that was presented today during the keynote holds for the next 3 months to a year, we will know that the technology will be way ahead of us in practice. We will know that we will always try to catch up. And by the way, half of us, if not more, are exhausted to keep up with it. So the conversation is, how do you know where you are? And if there's one important metric that I believe in the teams that I run is you become what you measure. So in that aspect of where am I in this journey, the institution, knowing that you've basically, we're doing good, we're moving forward, or we're not moving forward the speed that we should be moving. Because the other thing that we know that is important as we have this conversation in terms of framework, it's that the imperative of jumping into the AI wagon, it's critical for you, academics, educators, but also for our students in how we think about service delivery. So with that, we need to start thinking about frameworks from moving on a reactive manual AI projects. They come to me, I do them, right? To now AI becomes proactive and it's ingrained in our DNA. Think about prompting as an activity that you do as a consumer versus driving your life versus with AI on a daily basis. Think about having staffing models that today we grow through hiring spikes. I need to grow and I need to put all these people versus I know exactly how much money I need to spend in AI to accomplish XYZ outcomes or impact on campus. Or kind of where we are at as a company, all these AI experiments it's a playbook and we know exactly how do we multiply based on the elasticity of $1 more in AI gives us X, Y, Z. And this is basically the balance of the coin. Either you're on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side. Probably most of us somewhere in the middle, stirring, kind of skewing towards your left. A framework turns AI from one-off experiments into repeatable campus-wide ROI. And that's really what I love for you to start thinking about, these ideas that we're sharing with you. That we believe that this thinking, this idea of how do you map, it's an opportunity for you to understand where we're in this journey. And we also believe that this journey, it's linear, a gradient, and is not a switch. That you're going to be basically AI first or AI native in tomorrow. The data suggests that there's an incredible amount of intent on us users. I need AI. You raise your hand, AI is here. But also the data suggests that because the features have been developed, they're not on campus. Or the balance between technology budget and time and allocation. In the prior session, we had a conversation about pause. Can we put a pause so I can actually do this work? And that balance is very, very difficult. So adoption is where it's at. There's one thing you should keep in mind or basically leave with this conversation is, we know that the biggest mover in AI maturity, it's adoption. Technology, it's way ahead of us. And we can generalize saying that it's way ahead of every industry. But we can also generalize that the delta between adoption and the technology in higher education, it's even larger than some of our industry peers. We see in our practice, and the reflection of this work is basically looking at a lot of not only us as a company, but 300 clients. We see that the maturity, it's bringing about 12x cost savings. We're talking about the opportunity to start realizing that the moment I drop these AI projects or playbooks, it transfers into cost savings. The part that we also need to start thinking about, it's the mindset that it shifts and the digital transformation that it brings to us as professionals, and that is not quantified in the work at the moment. So one last point of view that is important as you think about this framework of who, why, and how, it's that we make a claim in higher education that is a bit controversial, which is there is the unit of teaching, academics, the actual thing that the school does, and we're not paying attention to that, not because it's not important. It's just that we truly believe that this maturity model applies for the service engine of the institution. In other words, we're looking at enrollment management, registrar's offices, financial aid, the administration unit. So we'll be walking through this framework through the lens of student life cycle, operation services, and kind of strategic in governance. And we will not be talking about pedagogy or teaching. That's probably a different model, and it's an important body of work that at the moment Element is not paying attention. Okay? So with disclaimers, this is the framework. What we've been seeing in our practice, in our journey, is that there are these 5 stages in which you need to start operating. The first stage is ad hoc AI, and I would say all of you are here just because you have Element in your back pockets. It allows you to do a ton of pilots, a ton of opportunities, and if anything, sometimes the data will be siloed, right? The fact that you have Element or tools like Element allows you to do this. Deployments of ChatGPT Education Enterprise will also get you there. Doug will give you more of the details of how this transfers to the different verticals on the school. The next evolution that we see is when your pipelines and data start basically creating a governance across your different units. This is probably one of the hardest things that we see in higher education. For the longest time, I couldn't get financial aid to share data with admissions or athletics to basically pick up all the admissions data that they needed to do to recruit the right athletes and whatnot. So one of the unifier components of AI maturity is that it's need for breaking the silos in data and making student affairs speak better with academic affairs, or role management through the lens of data, it's a great unifier. And that's basically when we start seeing that next footprint of data readiness. It's through the lens of data ready. When you start deploying some type of pilots and LLMs, and we start seeing some school doing that, this is where we are seeing you as data enabled. This looks like, your chatbot deployment, isolated LLMs, you have a knowledge base, and it's feeding different verticals in the school. This is basically, again, with Element, you're already here. And this is probably where Element starts moving into two different sides: admissions, student life, things of that sort. Really, very exciting. The agentic boundary comes here, and we'll give you more details there. An AI-first institution. We are seeing 1%, 2% of our practice being there, a very, very small, where an AI-first deployment starts basically, agentic deployment, it starts coming in. And a really important distinction is when your budget is influenced by AI. In other words, I need 5 counselors, you budget for it, you know that motion, I'm going to run 5 events, you know that motion, and you ask for the budget. When you start thinking about how to resource AI in the conversation about, I need XYZ, $12,000 to do this AI project, that's a really interesting signal that you are in AI first stage. Last, it's the North Star. I don't think an academic institution that we know has reached that point. In our survey of academic institutions, ASU is probably one of the most advanced ones. And I think that an AI native stage, it continues to be the North Star for all of us. What does that look like? It's an always on AI mindset. This is where no human nudges are basically present. The concept of human in the loop starts to erode, and AI, although it's supervised, could have the decision system that allows you to come and recruit a student, admit a student, and do multiple motions that today are enabled by us humans. So this is the framework, and what Doc is going to be doing throughout the conversation is we're going to start taking and applying this framework to different verticals as we see the school. Service delivery through the student life cycle, operations, and strategy and leadership.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. Can you all hear me? Yep. Cool. All right. We'll start off on the furthest right side, which is ad hoc AI. Some of the newer clients are probably coming from this state. Some prospects, you're probably still in this state. Your team and your department is going out. They're grabbing a list of students. They're looking at maybe the persona type. They go to ChatGPT. They put that in, and now I have a personalized email, and I'm doing AI type stuff. Now, that's just the first sort of section of it. This next piece, which is the data ready component, is one of the greatest places to go. And it's a really wonderful way of getting your whole organization as they're thinking about who are we serving and how do each one of those departments interact and how are they touching them? What is the response like? What is the service level? Is it 24/7 or is it only available between 9 to 5, X amount of days? There's only so many academic advising periods of times. And who's going to be handling and managing those type of things? So once you've hit this piece, you've got a good sense of what's happening. You understand the journey. You understand how much volume of communication they're getting and what type of communication. Are they getting omnichannel, text message, email, phone, or are they just getting one of those preferenced by the department that is providing support to them? Now, the AI-enabled space is where we as an organization, for 501 has been tackling for a lot of y'all now, which is the reactives. You're having the inbound pieces come in. You have a knowledge base that's probably maybe on one department piece or might be in multiple places overall. And what a lot of what you've seen today and have been hearing over the past few weeks is us moving into the space of the AI first, which is enablement of proactive work and activity in an autonomous type fashion. And I will say this on this last one, AI native, this will probably change literally maybe next month, 2 months. We might have artificial superintelligence, which will just blow all of our mind. I don't think we'll have AGI in the next 12 months, but ASI possibly. And it's going to be really, really exciting. So this is what are we doing and how are you thinking about this? Now, each one of your departments might be in a different area. Your team might be absolutely crushing it. You're the shining star of AI within the organization. You're the champion. You're now going to the president and saying, hey, we need to do this elsewhere. You're trying to influence your colleagues of saying like, hey, we can help you solve for the same problem. Because if you shift left in the data you're collecting on the front end, you get that better. You knock out the data silos. And at the end of the day, the student journey is long. Admission cycle could be maybe 1 to 2 to 3 weeks. Student success can be 12 months to 4 years. So it's a challenge, and it's an ongoing thing, and it's a beautiful situation that you can have once you get to the AI first pace. So now as you start talking about how are we doing the thing? And this is where a lot of us live. Even me, I run AI ops for us. I still live in this at times because it's the exploratory nature of what is the job that we're trying to support. I love to go sit down with my team members and figure out, what are you doing? How are you doing your work? And like, there's got to be a better way to do this, because I can help you automate and figure out how to do that. And how do we put the right tooling in place? And as you start talking about the tooling, it's the sharing of the tooling. Does your team, does your institution, do the leaders in your organization understand how we bring up our staff, how they can adopt it and grow with it? And in that process, you can go from a situation where you're doing heavy administrative work behind the blue screen to actually doing more people work, working with your colleagues, interacting more often with the actual students themselves. And we'll continue to go towards AI enabled. And with that, what you've done is you've educated your team, you've given them the tools, and they're now executing it. They're seeing the success, and they're able to offload that extensive amount of administrative work that's lower value in nature and less human centric, actually. And then the magic starts happening. It's working in admissions. It's working in financial aid. It's working in student success. It's working in the advancement office. You're now getting all of this sort of humming together, because how are you doing the thing that you do is so important, because it shifts and changes, and your organization will shift and change. And if you take the framework of what AI can do, it will help you in your seat today be prepared for how our industry will change. And most importantly, your competitors and peers will be adopting this and be pushing you and your organization. And this can be a clear way to avoid the death spiral, which is shrinking enrollment, worse yield, retention issues, budget cuts. You have people that are your best friends that get laid off. They've been there for 20 to 30 years because there's not enough money to do the thing anymore. And that's the core thing that we're always thinking about at Element, of like, how do we help our clients get to that next place? And how do we help the industry itself push itself to be the best thing that it can be, which is in the education space. So now we're going to come back into the why are we doing all this? Again, it's topical. It's topical. Is this in a board meeting at this point in time? Is it actually a legitimate item of this is our AI update in the board meeting? Maybe, maybe not. Is it a conversation in terms of what are we doing with AI within our department? Are you having those type of conversations yet or not? And understanding that your leadership has to have the buy-in and has to be willing to empower the change makers or elevate change makers that want to do this and lead this and give them the coverage. Because the beauty of once you have the coverage, you can be in this situation, you start getting the flywheel. You've identified this is what we're going to do from a strategy standpoint, why we're going to be doing this, why are we going to be doing this? And that why then turns into we're seeing the results, we're modifying, we're testing, we're changing, we're adapting an organization, we're modifying our strategy closer to more real time. And that's where you ultimately end up in a place which is, this is what our long-term strategy was and what we wanted it to be. This is what we're seeing. We're seeing the ground move. The macroeconomic changes dramatically. You can have a governmental change by which you can't bring international students in. That can be massively impactful. You can see a closure of a nearby school, which can boost your enrollment, or an entire unlock of a new industry that comes about. So bringing JC back in here. So as you start visualizing this, these three things all build off of each other, and you're probably going to be in slightly different areas, department to department, institution from an institution level. And it's okay. Everyone's trying to figure this out. Any new technology is challenging to execute against. It really is. And I do want to highlight a lot of what we are striving to get to and get everyone over the border of is that agentic AI boundary. And there's a clear difference to it. And JC and I were just talking about this a little bit before we got up here. The co-pilot versus agents.
Our growing hypothesis, as you can hear, is that as an academic institution, you're going to be in different parts here, right? You may be way ahead in your enrollment practice than you are in the student services practice. Moreover, the residence hall, it's going to be really up here, and maybe you'll have advancement over there. So there's this uniformity about how we're going to reach this, but there's a common denominator across all of us through this agentic boundary. And one of the important things that we're going to be mapping through our practice, and we'll let you know more about how we're going to roll this out, it's the transition from AI is my assistant, a co-pilot, through AI becomes a teammate. And the aspect, and I really love what Cosmo said on their keynote, basically thinking like a manager, right? And being a human, the aspect of managing AI and leading as a human, right? And I think that's a really important distinction that we want to map through this journey. But the part that it's key is this agentic boundary requires a differentiation of your budget, mindset, technology stack, and that commitment, right? So you're going to go through the motions, and it may happen, our hypothesis, that you stay on this left-hand side of this chart for quite some time, right? And you're not going to be able to jump through. But the moment you jump through, you start seeing other realized gains. So in other words, if I could give you a simple analogy, you're running a marathon, right? And you're training for this 10K. You cannot break the boundary 10K, until you basically break it. And then that's where the mileage of the marathon unfolds, the 26 miles and whatnot. So there's something about this agentic boundary that is going to be very interesting, that manifests itself on culture, people, process, and of course the tech stack.
So how to kick off your own audit. Core points that we're reviewing is the vision. What is the organization leaders? Where are they trying to align to it? Do you have alignment? Ask these questions, start the conversation. Make sure that your team is understanding, the cross-functional department leaders understand how are we thinking about this and the opportunities that we see. Do you have the right technology? If you're an Element client, yes, that's obvious. If you need to do more in terms of potentially having additional people to help you enforce that and drive that change, understanding, do you have that piece coming together? Do you still have a bunch of endpoint data systems that aren't in the Element data model, which will hamper the ability for a reactive agent or a proactive agent to be the best agent that it can be? And understand those are the real value unlocks. And I've seen this a ton. When you get all of your data into a single place, the agent gets so much more performant. They know who this person is. They know why to reach out to this person on an SMS versus a phone call versus an email. And that SMS needs to be delivered after 7 p.m. because they said that they work during the day and they're never going to answer that phone call. They're never going to look at that email, but they will respond to the text message after. Your people and culture, as you go to this, is the staff trained? Are they really aware of what they do? I will give a plug to the Enrollify Network. Get your staff on that. Have them listen to these podcasts. They'll get them thinking creatively. There's so many wonderful sort of use cases that our clients have solved because it's hard. This is hard to do. Adoption and change management is a hard thing to do, but you can find like peer organizations that are tackling the same challenges and getting your people involved in that whole process and being very concerted in driving understanding of the tools and the why you're using the tool to unlock the value of you as a person to actually become more centric of doing people-oriented work versus sitting behind a blue screen, sending emails, dialing numbers, etc. As you go through this other piece, your governance piece, do you have good constraints on how people are bringing in AI? Is this the bring your own AI to work? And you got people dropping personal identifiable information into the personal GPTs to do stuff. Not a wonderful experience. Very, very questionable. Let's avoid that as best we can. And then we have a roadmap and we set our KPIs, of which is things that we think about is What is the world by which you have human assistant enrollment support versus AI supported assistance? That becomes a metric that you start thinking through. You start thinking about the resolution rate of an AI assistant that is handling a full conversation that they didn't have to reach out and lean into using those humans. But the double tap there is when they do reach out to those humans, of asking the why and being curious about why could the agent not solve for that problem, because it can be huge value unlocks. Example value unlock that I can think of is one of the schools that's one of our clients. They deployed agents, and they were really struggling with one topic, which was transfer students that wanted to take summer school. The agent didn't know how to answer it, and it kept going to humans. And the thought was, well, why? Well, the knowledge base didn't have it. And the organization themselves, the admissions reps, didn't actually know how to do the same thing. And it was a huge unlock for them, because now they started catering and marketing. So they're taking the insight where the agent was able to answer a question that they weren't getting from their on-the-ground admission staff, because they couldn't connect the dots, but the agents were helping identify those types of situations. So
none of these are mutually exclusive, right? And I want you to leave with a really important thing that we see in our practice as we advise you, and also as we advise ourselves and we'll roll this out. Can you go back to the prior slide? You need to have all of this fully orchestrated to move forward in this journey. Chances are that your president is going to come and say, here's my vision and the governance and ethics committee to run AI. Great. Let's go buy the technology and let's create, the roadmap, the metrics, and this is how people are going to be uplifted. That's going to take place. Many of you are actually the first project in the academic institution because you have AI, and it will be more a bottom-up approach to AI maturity and adoption. In other words, you got the technology, you have us, and then all of a sudden that's start showcasing wins, and you see it in the metrics, and then a vision emerges, or maybe the governance starts coming in, and then finally the whole university or another team unit adopts it, and you start seeing that proliferation of the maturity. So a top-down approach, perfect scenario where all these things are in balance, but many of you introduced into being the pioneers of AI on campus and having that proliferation of maturity. In my experience, the stage that I map this out is when we first introduced digital forms, when we went from paper management to digital forms, and the majority of maturity came from admissions or the registrar's office documenting forms, and also like the campus became digital. In other words, sometimes IT will run the project for us. Many times it is you or the non-IT departments who bring it to the institution.
So if you're wondering some questions to be rolling through, feel free to take a screenshot of this, and or I believe the decks will be available after. But the one that I would always be thinking about here, to me, especially in the student lifecycle journey, is like, how are we thinking about how quickly we're running and touching people? How many touch points are you getting? How quickly is that happening? And understanding the baselines of what that looks like. So do a little bit of forensics on your data and understand how quickly that could be improved. And specifically, you start getting into like, how much work can we unlock? Which is, if I had 24 extra hours in a day, what are all the other things that I would do if I could have an agent or 15 people underneath me to go do that? If you use that creative thinking, you'll start seeing the value of what can be done. And that's the beauty of the platform that you'll have available to you. As you're going through thinking about service and ops, a couple of them that jump out to me is, and I think this is a challenge for a lot of folks, is what happens in those peak periods of time? And the service delivery starts falling apart. You've got too many applications to see. It's taking you too long to review the applications. You've got long delays on financial aid packaging, all of that type of stuff. Those are the situations by which AI can really step in to take the administrative burden off so that your team is able to focus on the high value enrollments that you think are going to be the best fit. You can get packaging done faster. You understand what's going on. You're mitigating bias or utilizing some of the tools that we have available. And then as we jump into strategy and governance, what is ROI? What does AI effectiveness mean? And thinking through that in the lens of, if you take it for yourself, how much value is this driving to me? That's wonderful. Now do the next thing. What does this bring to my team? What does this bring to my department? For my department, what does this mean to our service area? If that's admissions and marketing, from admissions and marketing to student support, you start thinking through this prism of time savings, but the also benefit of like, what happens if we start, I don't know, 10 to 15% improvement in enrollment because we get back to leads faster, or guess what? We've mitigated a huge time suck on us because we've really leaned into fraud detection, that our team members are focusing on actual people, not ghost students. And I think of the ghost student situation, you have California, was it 2024? So 24-ish% of some of their enrollments in a couple of their schools were ghost students. And think about the time and effort that went into packaging that. Admissions, student support, academic advising, we're working all of those people. That was lost time. So
what do you start seeing in these questions, obviously, as we invite you to take them home, is in the coming months, you'll see us rolling out this framework so that our partners and community can start mapping itself onto this framework. And what we'd love to sponsor, it's where you at in this journey, right? And one of the important, basically, benchmarks that we can give you is where you are as an institution and where you are as a team. Because as I said, our working hypothesis, as we support you, is that the institution may be here, but your department may be way above, right? Or vice versa. Your department is below and not tracking with the academic institution. So this framework kind of has this idea in mind. And one of the hopes that we have is having you and your different teams take it. And so we can basically provide that benchmarking exercise. So we recap?
Yeah. Roll through it. Do you want to take it?
Before we recap, we can open up for questions and then we'll just do the recap.
So this framework.
Well, I'll repeat. Yeah, go ahead.
In this framework, how do you guard against letting perfection get in the way of progress?
In the framework, how do we guard against perfection and getting on the way of progress? One of the things that happens on basically this idea of the pilots, right? And you see the first stages, readiness, and it's that's actually where it fits. There's no way your pilot is going to be perfect, right? If you do every pilot perfect, it will not be a pilot, right? And the way it happens, if you actually capture it to AI first, and you start thinking that the motions are playbooks that you run, that's where you run when you reach a level of perfection. As a data analytics person, I'm used to having majority of my models fail or not being adopted, which is basically a description that many of the technology projects that we run will fail, which is fine. And as academic institutions, we sometimes have to be comfortable with it did not work as expected. How do we improve it? And then we go the other round. So long answer short, that evolution of failure is part of the pilots, knowing that some of them will stick, some of them will not. But once we reach that AI first or native stages, that's when the playbooks have reached a level of perfection. My last word on that, I would actually label them the way I call them in our teams. They're perfectly imperfect, right? But that's that motion.
A good question you can always ask yourself is, what does failure look like, and how is this going to fail? And use that as a barometer on like, what is perfection? How is that done? I'll say this: I've been trapped. There's something called norm casing and edge casing. And we always solution for norms, but the reality, edge case is going to be something that changes because you did something 6 months ago and the entire ecosystem of where our enrollments come from, guess what? That's now all edge case. So you have to have that adaptability. And that's the beauty of what AI gives you, is that you're able to experiment so much faster. The ability to build the agents, you're spending hours building agents versus months, if not quarters, building workflows to validate the concept.
Yes, I was wondering, is HAIRO an acronym of some kind?
HAIRO KJ.
I said, is HAIRO an acronym of some kind? HAIRO.
A data framework. What's the
higher education readiness and opportunity framework?
Thank you. Yes,
there's an and in there.
Thank you.
Hi. What would you say is a good way for people fighting back against AI? So like the people are like people within your university are pushing back. No, we don't want AI. This is dumb. This is not a good investment right now. How would you push back against that? Pushback?
It's a really important conversation, right? So, for every change, there's resistance, right? And for every change, there's fear, right? And I think one of the most important things about technology introduction, right? It's that there is, for every change of resistance, there's a unifying aspect of it brings people together. So, if there's something that I believe numbers do really well, is that it brings people together. The agnostic, the resistors, and not. So, campuses, we're so good at that, right? I mean, I still think I have faculty who's resistant online education, right? So that's going to be part of our DNA. That's going to be part of the things that we go for. Now, give you the two stages, right? There's so much what we can do from the bottom-up approach, right? We will probably do it and we'll get to transform our teams. But the big play, the institutional play, would only play out when you have the leadership that it's behind you. So I'll leave you with two stages. I believe that there will be institutions that don't change, right? And how do they survive or not? It's not part of the conversation, but as people who want to bring AI, so you need to look for places that allow you to do that, right? So some academic institutions did not migrate to digital, cloud things, or they didn't do this type of thing. So it made our lives very difficult. So as a professional, I brought in my talent or my things somewhere else. So there's an aspect of many of us, as we push these agendas, we may be welcome and be agents of change. Or sometimes as a professional, you need to say, this is not the place that it's ready for that transformation. Obviously, personally, as you can imagine, I believe you have to be in a place that embraces this. But when there is resistance and it's not happening from the top, it's very, very, very difficult because, AI, as you see through the framework, it's not ad hoc projects. And if it's not in a president's agenda, how do you balance student success outcomes in your AI strategy? Your institution, it's set up for a very, very difficult next couple of months. Why? Because everyone else is. So I hope the answer is not very grim. I'm just trying to be very honest, but I really think that's where it's at.
Yeah. I will iterate this. I'm watching schools that I've known for a long time having these very difficult conversations that they did not embrace technology in the right way, that these presidents are having to fire their friends that they've known for 30 years. That's a very uncomfortable situation, and there's a better way of doing it.
We actually changed our setup slide, but it was on your point. It was the haves and have-nots. The world of universities will divide between the ones who automate and the ones who don't. But that's basically, in a way, the answer.
And it's a capacity unlock. It's the capacity unlock. It's the imagination and the creative things that humans can be more human-centric when we automate the very administrative task away. That we can think about how to work with our colleagues, how to work better with our stakeholders, how to work better with our students. That is the real unlock here, is that you can do more human-centric, high-order work versus low menial work of rescheduling the appointment, following up on that email, following up on the text message, having a decent night's sleep on Saturday and Sunday because you're not responding to student concerns and complaints.
But it sounds like there's a sort of the link with the question that I asked. There's a predecessor for all of this on how to become a culture of agility. Yes. There has to be an openness organizationally to say, we realize that we can't fence out the next 2 years and get this perfect process in play and then try to automate you. You've got to have a willingness to have that sort of agile, cushion, cool to say, if Vero can even validate, that's going to go forward. And what I'm going to work well now.
Small failures, small, fast iterations.
Right. I think we're at time. So I want to thank everybody, and then we'll continue the conversation and look out for this rollout, and love to see you guys mapped again. Thank you very much.